types of kefir and other fermented drinks. Gut health and probiotics are popular words these days. Lots of companies are selling their versions of probiotics. Some are refrigerated, some are not, and most claim to have billions of viable organisms in their pills or powders. Hopefully, that's true. Over the years, I've spent thousands of dollars on probiotics. Most of them were worthless. I didn't notice a difference at all when taking them. There were a couple of brands that were fairly good, and I believe they were worth the money. But even with those, there was still something lingering in my mind that there had to be something better out there. There was. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. First, we need to talk about fermented drinks in general. So, when you go into the grocery store or health food stores, you'll find so many choices of different varieties of kefir, non dairy kefirs, cultured yogurt drinks, water kefir, coconut kefir, etc., etc., etc. Some are good and some are loaded with sugar and other not so wonderful ingredients. Not so great. Watch your ingredients. This is really important. Second, notice that there are dairy versions and non-dairy versions of kefir and fermented drinks. It's easy to decipher between the dairy drinks and the non-dairy ones. The dairy milk versions will be from either cow's milk, goats, or sheep. They come in full fat options to very low fat varieties. Again, lots of choices. And on a side note, if you can't drink milk, you'll know it. It'll make you feel bloated or gassy or give you some noticeable indigestion or other frustrating health issues. So, when a person can't have dairy, they often turn to fermented or cultured non dairy versions, such as fermented coconut milk, fermented almond milk, oat milk, seed milks, water kefir, coconut kefir, or fermented nut drinks. Again, tons of choices. This is not a bad thing because they're usually delicious and are fairly good for you. Again, as long as they're not loaded with sugar and a bunch of junky ingredients. Third, this is the next breakdown of kefirs and fermented drinks. It's very simple. Any kefir or yogurt drink you purchase in the stores is made from a powdered form of very specific beneficial bacterial strains or beneficial yeasts. And the box packets of kefir powder or yogurt powder you purchase to make your own kefir or yogurt at home are also made from very specific strains of beneficial bacteria or beneficial yeasts. This is not a bad thing, but just know that these strains are typically not terribly strong. If you'll notice on the boxes of some of the powdered mixes, they will often say that you can use the kefir or yogurt as a starter for new batches about 7 times. Then they suggest that you start over with a new starter packet. I did some research and found out that some of the strains of beneficial bacteria or yeasts in the packets will often, over a period of time, be overrun by viruses or stronger bacteria. I didn't like this. So, as a quick side note again, just know that the fermented drinks you purchase in the stores are still a good thing. Probiotic drinks are definitely better for you than soda pop, energy drinks, or sports drinks. But in the search for strong probiotics, I eventually came to learn about real kefir, living kefir grains grown in real milk. Back in 2003, I started making my own real kefir with raw goat's milk. I believe it was a huge part of regaining my internal health. I also learned about type A2 milk. This is milk that comes from specific breeds of cows, often your older varieties. It also comes from all types of goats and all types of sheep. A2 milk is often better tolerated by people with milk issues. And additionally, goat milk also has a different kind of fat than cow's milk, which is easier to digest. On the ranch, I grew up drinking raw cow's milk as a kid and did great on it. But as I got older, my system wasn't as happy with cow's milk. This really frustrated me because I loved milk, especially in homemade milkshakes. So when I discovered goat milk, it was a happy day. So if you have a sensitivity to cow's milk, check out goat's milk or sheep's milk. Over the years, I gradually got away from making kefir with the living kefir grains. I just got busy, other things got in the way, and I started using only the packets of powdered varieties of kefir, yogurt, or heirloom yogurts. They were good, but my health wasn't as strong as it was when I was making and drinking the real kefir. So I once again returned to making kefir with the living grains. I definitely noticed a difference. They were alive. They made me feel more alive. I again need to clarify that taking in beneficial probiotics in any form is a good thing. But if you're looking for the very active, heartier stuff, you might check out the real deal. And if you treat them right, the grains can essentially live forever, well, at least as long as you continue to feed them. And feeding them is actually very quick and easy. I never refrigerate my kefir grains unless I'm going to be gone for a long time, but even then, I generally figure out how to travel with them. So, the last thing I want to say is when we moved to a different house, I no longer had access to fresh goat's milk. Big bummer. So, I then tried making kefir with powdered goat milk from the store. It worked. The grains were smaller than they were when growing in the fresh goat's milk or even cow's milk, but they were still happy. I made a very thin version of the milk, which is also better tolerated by people who have milk issues. With the powdered goat milk, the package says to mix 4 tablespoons or 1/4 cup of powdered goat milk with 1 cup of water to make 1 cup of milk. I used half that amount, 2 tablespoons of powdered goat milk in 1 cup of water. It produces a thin kefir, but it is much easier on the digestive system of those who can't have milk products. I love it. If you can't get powdered goat's milk, you can use any type of powdered milk you can get. It just has to be milk. I have looked into making non-dairy kefirs with the living kefir grains. It's possible, but not a great option. The kefir grains actually need lactose, milk sugar, to live and thrive. You could add powdered lactose to almond milk or other non-dairy milk, but then you'd still be getting a milk product. So that's your choice to make. So let's get to the video and I'll show you how easy it is to make kefir. Okay, so a lot of times when you first start out with kefir, you'll order some online and you'll usually get something that's about this much. They say a teaspoon, sometimes you'll get a couple teaspoons, and it runs about $10 or so. I usually get mine on Amazon. I bought them on eBay. There's several people selling them. But the way you start this out is you will take a small jar, another one of my glass jars, and you will take some milk. This happens to be some of the cow's milk. Again, it's probably backwards for you. I should write it backwards. But you don't want to put too much milk when you first start. So when you are first starting out with the kefir as a little bitty baby guy, unless if you have a ton of grains, you need to start in just a little bit of milk because you want to make sure that that kefir inoculates or puts all the good bacteria into this tiny bit of milk. As your grains begin to grow, then you can start adding more milk and you'll eventually get to the point like I use great big huge pickle jars, big pickle jars, and they are full of kefir grains and milk. So I give a lot of that to my chickens. It helps keep their little guts healthy too. So you can make as little as you want or as much as you want. So it just depends on how much you're using and drinking per day. So don't make too much extra. So to filter them off, what I typically use is a jar, and I love glass. I collect jars all the time. So if you use some salsa or pickles or something like that and you have a nice heavy jar, save your jar. They're very, very handy. In fact, I have too much glass, but it's wonderful stuff. Okay, so this is a canning funnel. You can just buy these at Walmart or any store that carries stuff like that. And then this is a little filter colander thing, and it's plasticky. I have heard that a lot of your fermented things do not like metal. It reacts with them badly. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't want to take the risk, so I use plastic. I'm not a big plastic fan because of BPA and all this other stuff that it does to you. But in this case, it barely touches it. So you just put this in here. You can use anything that you want, but this, for me, I have found over the years, is the easiest. Okay, so then you have your jar. All this has in here is kefir that has already been fermented and the kefir grains. So I'm going to tip this down a little bit so you can see better. And just pour it in here. Okay, little spatula, use any size you want. And I just kind of move this around to get the milk and the kefir to come out. And what you're going to be left with in this colander are the actual kefir grains. They kind of look like cauliflower or the inside of a jelly bean, sort of gummy-like. And I will, without dripping everywhere, try to show you this. So if you see that these are just kind of this little, like there's a cutie pie there. If you can see, oops, right here is just sort of like this sticky little gummy guy. I try not to leave them exposed to air too long because air carries lots of nasty things in it. Okay, I'm going to show you cow's milk first, and I relabeled this backwards, so hopefully it will read correctly for you now. So this is raw cow's milk. These are the kefir grains that are in the raw cow's milk. I have allowed these to grow quite a bit, so there's quite a few grains in here that are able to keep up with the amount of milk in here. So to feed them, it's really pretty easy. I'm just going to reuse this one jar and reuse what I had here. So again, you're just going to take your funnel, put your colander in there, and just pour all that nice new kefir that you have made from the day before. And now here are the grains sitting in this colander, like yay. Okay, so here's my kefir, ready to drink, ready to go. I'm going to set it off to the side, but now it's time to feed the babies. So in this jar, and sometimes I reuse the jar for a couple days, 3 days or so, but it's good to replace it so it doesn't get too dirty. So now take your colander, dump your grains back into your jar. Get that out of the way. And now I'm going to take milk, pour it into my jar. And that's it. I have a friend who makes these little bonnets that she calls them. These are linen. Again, I love linen, but you could also use cotton or anything. And she's also potentially going to put these on the market if anybody's interested. So you just snap this right over the top and let this sit on your countertop. Now, kefir likes to move. One of the things, if you look about where it came from, they believe it came from Turkey or some of the other areas. And a lot of times they would hang this in a leather skin bag in doorways. And so as people would walk by, it would move, and those kefir grains would move back and forth, or sometimes they would carry them on their horses or their camels. And those kefir grains, again, as the animal would walk, they would slosh. So kefir grains like to move. So sometimes when they're sitting on your counter, give them a swirl. Just walk by and pick them up and swirl them around. They like to breathe and they like to move. So they're active little things. Something else that you guys need to be aware of is that kefir grains build up pressure. So years ago, this is probably about 20 years ago when I was making kefir, I heard this explosion and found out that the kefir grains that I had up in my cupboard had exploded and blew glass all over my cupboard. Well, I had made the mistake of putting a lid on my kefir as it was fermenting, and so it produced this little bomb. And I then learned that you do not leave your lids or put lids on kefir grains. They actually can be kind of dangerous. So I wanted to show you this. This is my big pickle jar of kefir grains in the cow's milk. And when you feed them, I wanted to show you kind of what happens here. I'll give them a swirl and get some pressure built up. Okay, I'm going to put this up to the mic. If you can hear that, you will start to hear little squeaky noises, and that's pressure. You don't want to hear that with your kefir because that's a potential bomb. And you can see inside here, it's really starting to get foamy and bubbly. That is a good sign. You want foamy and bubbly, but you do not want to trap that pressure in. So no lids, no lids. You want to make sure that you put some kind of a little mesh cloth cover over it so you don't do anything dangerous. Okay, this is a very big gallon jar of kefir that I have going right now. This is for the chickens, but I want to show you what happens when it is fermented. It will start to separate. So if you can see, this clear part down here is the whey, and this clumpy part up here at the top are the protein solids. This is a good sign. This is showing that your culture is active. So you should see that. After your kefir is fermented, a lot of times it will separate and you will have the white part float and you'll have this kind of a yellowish, clear, watery looking liquid on the bottom. That's a very good sign. That means that milk has been broken down to the point that it is now truly kefir. Now we're going to talk about the goat milk. So if you can get raw goat's milk from somebody that you know, again, from a healthy animal, that is fantastic. But some people don't have access to goats or raw goat milk. And so that was a little bit of a challenge. So I went to our local Walmart and found this. I know it's going to be backwards for you, but this is a Meyenberg whole powdered goat milk. And they just sell this there. You can buy this online also. There's a whole bunch of other brands too, so try to find one that's a pretty decent quality. But I just wanted to see if this would work because, you know, some people don't have access to raw milk. And this actually works incredibly well. Okay, so to make this goat milk from the powdered variety, I just get a jar, and I found these big honey jars years and years ago when I had the store, and they're fantastic. They hold probably about 6 cups of liquid. So if you can find a jar about this size, that's great. So again, look for pickle jars or pepperoncini jars or anything like that. So I use half the amount of the powdered milk that you're supposed to, which is great again for people who have issues. Okay, so this is just 4 cups of clean water, filtered water. I like to boil my water a lot of times to just guarantee that you do have something that's a good clean water, because lots of things grow in water. Okay, so then we're going to just put 8 tablespoons in here. So one, all I'm doing is just taking that out. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, you don't have to be exact. This isn't a laboratory science. And so 4 cups of water, 8 tablespoons of powder. Put the lid on it. Shake, 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 shake. It's kind of like making butter. Give it a good shake. If your water's a little bit warm, that definitely helps some. Okay. Get a good workout here. Okay, this looks like milk. It is milk. This is probably like a skimmed milk. So again, if you have milk issues, this should be a little bit easier on your system. Yeah, one thing that I have noticed is depending on your genetics, some people do better with milk and some people do not. I have a lot of American Indian in my ancestry, and I have since talked to several people who are also American Indian, and they do not do well with milk products. But I seem to tolerate this just fine. So keep that in mind if you say, oh, I know I can't do milk, it really makes me sick. Well, Same here, give this a shot. Okay, so to make your kefir, this is the powdered goat milk kefir grains. So a lot of times, let me bump this down for you a little bit. This is another one of my favorite little jars. It's a pickle jar. So I do put a lid on this one because after it's been fermented, I use this so quickly that there's usually not much left. And so as long as you have a lot of airspace in here and you pop that lid now and then, you're not going to produce bombs. So again, take your little canning funnel, put that on the jar you want to catch your kefir in. Here's my mesh colander again. I'm going to just pour this in here. Run this around until all the kefir drains out. And you don't have to get every drop out. Sometimes it's good to leave a little bit in the bottom. Okay, so if you can see, I have a lot of kefir grains in this jar. The reason I do that is because I want this to ferment very, very quickly because I use this every day. And if you get to the point where you have too many grains, you can just put them down your drain, feed them to your chickens, whatever you want to do. Okay, so now to feed this, I'm going to get this little baby out of the way. Okay, so here's my jar that the grains just came out of. I'm going to flip that back over. I'm done with this now. And now my kefir grain babies are back in its original jar. And here's the milk that I just mixed up. Give it another good shake, make sure that's good to go. And then I just am going to pour this in here. And you just fill it up with about how much you think you're going to use for the next day. Again, this is not, it's science. Done with this. Take my bonnet. You can also use a piece of paper towel or a napkin or anything that you've got, any piece of cloth with a rubber band. And I have now fed my kefir grain babies. They are happy. I'll give them a little swirl. And I'm going to put these on the countertop. And they will sit there until tomorrow. And they'll be ready to go. And you will start to see that separation again with the thick curds on the top and that really thin, watery looking whey on the bottom. If you don't see that, you might let it rest just a little bit more or put more kefir grains in here because you want lots of good soldiers on your side. So this is the kefir that we just drained off. This is the powdered goat milk variety. A lot of times people will ask, well, how much do you drink in a day? So in the morning, this is just a little juice glass. I will have, roughly that much, sometimes a little more, a little less. Just see what your body's saying, because some mornings I can tell I want 2 glasses of this. Some mornings it's like, nah, we'll just do like half. Now, if you do have issues with milk, in my training, they said start small. And what I mean by small, this is a shot glass. So obviously not with whiskey or anything like that, but little teeny tiny bit, tablespoon, 2 tablespoons for little bitty kids or babies or anybody who, need to get those good bugs in their system. Little teeny tiny bit. If you have milk sensitivities, start very, very small. Allow your body to build up those enzymes or the ability to digest that kefir. Also, make sure that your gallbladder is working well and that your stomach acid is working well, because sometimes those can also cause a dairy allergy or a dairy issue. Okay, one other note on kefir is Growing up on the ranch, having grandparents that homesteaded, electricity was something that you didn't always have. So this is one thing that I also like about kefir, is that it does not require electricity to make. When you use the box mixes or the box packets, a lot of times you do have to refrigerate some of those. But with kefir grains, you do not. They live on your counter. You feed them, you filter off what you want to drink, and you just keep that cycle going. That to me is a really wonderful thing, because sometimes people don't have electricity, and you can still maintain your gut health without having refrigerators and all these fancy gadgets and goo-gaw. So one other thing too is people will ask, well, when do I drink the kefir? The very best time to get probiotics in your system is first thing in the morning or before you go to bed at night, because when you sleep and you lay down, those good bugs get into your guts and they do all sorts of happy things. That's not going to go into the whole science behind that. But in the morning, you do not have any food in your stomach yet. You've been fasting, and it's really good to get those probiotics into your gut when there's nothing else in there. Because if you say, okay, I have my lovely glass of kefir and I eat my breakfast and then I have my kefir, well, your food stays in your stomach anywhere from 2 to 4 hours depending on what you ate. So when I pour this in there with all the food, it's going to be digested with the food and it's going to be treated as food. It will help you digest your meal because it has a lot of good enzymes in here and good bacteria, which is great. But if you're expecting it to get down into your small intestine, into your bowel, where you want just those bacteria in there to help heal diseases and help heal inflammation, you don't want to be mixing this with all of your food. You basically waste it. So figure out what you want to use it for. If you want to use it as a digestive enzyme, eat it with your meals. If you want to heal your gut and heal your bowel, empty stomach in the morning, empty stomach at night. So the word kefir in Turkish literally means feel good. So enjoy, feel good.